back for Monarch Sports Talk, episode 5, the Grand Prix of Imola just happened, and holy, it was a good one. That was a great race.
It's funny. I had a friend of mine here the other day, and he's not an F1 fan, but he was like, I feel like every F1 fan's dream is to wake up and see that it was a wet race. And and when I turned on my computer and they were like, and it's been wet conditions here today, and I was like, yes.
I know, so fired up. And the fact that it was like wet, but they were like, the forecast was it was drying up, which means
totally,
they're gonna get on those slicks, because it's always fun just like seeing the pace of these vehicles, but the thing with starting on intermediates or wets is that it's so unpredictable. It really comes down to the driver. We all saw how many people went off the track. It was hilarious.
It's so funny.
The place was a skating rink at a certain point, and we had a couple cars that started on the wets, and majority, 90% of them, I think only 2 started on wets. It was Gasly and Mazepin. I remember watching that and being like, of course they put Mazepin on the wets. They're trying to reduce the chances of fucking spinning out and hitting the damn wall.
They would put them on studded tires if they could.
Oh man, I feel like that's a good bet right now.
Yeah, no kidding, eh?
I know. You're actually probably not going to win that much.
Yeah.
No, definitely not. And poor Pierre Gasly too, because he qualified 6th, I believe, and I feel like they just they tried to hold on to those wet tires as long as they could, but he was just dropping, just sinking through the back.
They gambled.
Totally.
I feel like they gambled on the wets, and it just didn't pay off for them.
Yeah, no, it didn't. Not at all.
I feel like Alpha's at this point where they need to take those chances to try and get a top 5 finish to get as many points as possible. And this week it just didn't work out, but man, it's so cool. It's so great to see that they have the pace they do every weekend.
It's awesome.
Their race pace is great, and their qualifying pace is even better. So I still think good things are ahead for them. Do you guys want to just recap the top 10 positions here? So
yeah, sure.
Just so take her home. Who won this one?
We got it was Max, Hamilton, and Hamilton's drive. Let's just start with Max too, I guess. Do you like his pass and his start
launching off that line?
Oh my goodness! But do you think if he doesn't make that pass, what do you think the outcome of the race is? Do you think Max still wins, or do you think Lewis kind of checks out?
I think it'd be super close. It's so hard to say right now because those 2 cars seem like they're splitting hairs.
Oh, it's crazy.
They're incredibly close, which is super fun to watch.
Oh, it's awesome.
It's great. Like Red Bull made that huge step up from last season. Their car just looks that much better. Yeah. And obviously having Max in their number 1 position. And I think even though Checo didn't have a great race in Imola, he kind of made a few mistakes and maybe just had the wrong strategy. A couple things didn't work in his favor. But I think having him, because he showed what he can do in the first race, obviously, I think having him will be super important, and they can push Mercedes for that Constructors' Championship.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, I feel like if Max didn't have that launch and was behind Hamilton on that first lap, his chances of winning the race decline a lot. Because
totally, man.
Lewis up front with kind of no pressure ahead of him. He's really good at defending, and to have the car that he has, defending is a lot easier. I think that launch was massively important.
Oh, insanely. And I think, like you said, it best Lewis with that car and the track conditions, it would be so difficult to get around him if Max didn't right at the start. So
yeah, I mean, we saw it the whole race pretty much. It was difficult for these guys to pass. Yeah. first of all, it's a tight track. So there's not a lot of areas that you are even on a great day, but then you add in those wet conditions, and there was really only one spot that was safe.
Kind of that DRS zone on the front, on that home stretch.
Exactly.
Yeah, like right by the pit lane.
Yep. Yeah. So that was, I'm just so happy that we got to see another battle with Max and Hamilton. And this time it worked out for Max. And in my opinion, Hamilton got lucky once again, at a time when the guy probably should finish like P7 or something, he ends up, getting that safety car and that red flag at that exact moment. He was actually able to reverse out of that wall, go around, pit onto fresh tires and a new wing, and then the red flag comes out. So he had the freshest tires going on that restart by like 2 or 3 laps.
Yeah. And it's like, but then also for that to happen, and then his just pure ability to drive that car and go from 9th to 2nd. Yeah. It's just so impressive. Because like when I like watched that Mercedes just going into the pit or into the gravel and just bumps the wall, and they're like, it's Lewis Hamilton. I was like, oh yes,
man. We were all cheering. We were all like, it was baby one.
Totally. We're like, I was so happy. And then I was just like, that was like lap 32. And I'm like, oh man, there's like half the race left. Like, and then he's like slowly gets out. I'm like, no.
I know. Yeah. It was, like definitely props to Lewis. And he's that kind of driver that he's going to overtake. But it is Lewis Hamilton in a Mercedes car that is kind of steps ahead of going through the pack at that point.
Yeah. And getting out of like where he was pinned up against that wall.
Yeah.
Not many.
He got out, to be honest.
I'm shocked.
How many times have you seen a driver get stuck in gravel and just dig himself a hole?
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think that just shows you too.
And that's kind of, I watched Lewis's post-race interview, and that's kind of what he was saying. He said it took that long to get out because he didn't want to hit the throttle and then dig that hole and kind of teach himself in that gravel.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
Yeah. Experience, man. He knows what to do in the situations,
Yeah.
So that was huge. And it's cool to see that he is human. He went to make a pass and he got off the dry line and the car didn't stop and he went off the track. So it's just always nice to see these guys, not be as perfect as they kind of seem. Even Verstappen, I was like, my heart stopped, man, when the safety car was going in and he comes around the corner and slips out. I was
like devastated. Yeah. And then especially because when he comes back onto the track, I think who's behind him right at the time? I think it's Charles, right?
Charles, yeah.
Yeah. And like if Max is like not even half a second slower, Charles is in the lead.
Absolutely.
Oh,
yeah. Like it was so tight.
Yeah. I'd like to dedicate my Pinot Brewing Don't Lose Your Dinosaur to my driver of the day, Lando Norris.
Yeah.
Lando had a race, man. He had a race. He was quick.
Yeah, super quick. And you can just see how much more comfortable he is in that car opposed to Daniel. Because like halfway through that race, they asked Daniel to swap positions and Lando just checks out.
Yeah.
He's gone.
Yeah.
So that is reassuring though, because it just shows you how fast that McLaren is. And once Daniel gets the hang of it, I think it's going to be great.
Totally. I think McLaren's going to score some good points, in the middle of the season here. And like, I feel like they are going to be pushing. It's cool to see that Ferrari is also competing up there, like to finish 4-5, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
4-5 is a great,
unreal
8 points for Ferrari. And I think, like we said, with Mercedes and Red Bull, and that competition will be fun to watch. I think it's great to have McLaren and Ferrari as those two clear-cut favorites for that third place in constructors.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I even think like those two teams with all 4 drivers, any given race, like they're going to compete for podiums. They're going to compete for race wins.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's crazy how difficult like making it into the last qualifying sector has like become with all these top drivers now, like, and the cars just performing like Carlos didn't make Q1, I don't think, right? Like I think he qualified 11th.
Yeah, P11.
Yeah, which is nuts to think that, and then he finishes 5th in the race, so it's pretty wild. Qualifying, I feel like, has just become so much more difficult this year.
Absolutely. And it's good to see some of these teams in the back. Well, even Williams, man, like Russell had a great qualifying session. And
Russell
I know
and
like
Latifi.
Yeah, Russell and Latifi. Latifi had his best, like he almost beat him. He almost beat Russell out, which was pretty cool to see.
Yeah. Yeah, it was cool to see Latifi do well. And then it's just unfortunate that he was the first guy to spin. He had contact with Mazepin, I think, and then that was the first safety car of the race.
That's right. Yeah, that was pretty nasty, actually.
That was.
I'm just kind of going through the the result list here. So seeing Ferrari up there makes me so happy. Especially back in Italy, it's like that they wanted to perform there, and I feel like they should be stoked. I saw some cool interviews. A cool interview with Danny Rick and talking about how he like. It was just like very mature of him, kind of congratulating Lando and saying how honestly this is like more encouraging than anything to see that the car is performing where it is.
Yeah.
And onto what you said, like I have no doubt that he's gonna get some podiums this year.
Oh, for sure, man. And I think it was cool to see too. Just listening to their radio chat when they asked Daniel to move over, he's just like, "Yep, understood, no problem." And for a teammate, I think especially him, like a new member to the team, second race. Lando's been in that car for 3 years. Like you gotta let him go by. And even if you're the veteran driver, but that just shows you kind of how much of a team player he is. So
it's great to see.
I'll bust out my Danny Rick merch when they get to podium.
I wanted to touch on the that restart after the red flag. Obviously, like Verstappen spinning out was crazy, but Charles Leclerc didn't have his team radio after that restart. So so I just saw that yesterday. But he was able to communicate with the team, and so they could hear what he was saying, and he couldn't hear any team reports or team orders or anything like that.
That's wild.
He's so just out there by himself.
So I even think because he just slow restart. Like Lando passed him right away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think part of that was probably due to no team communication.
Oh, absolutely. Right. They're telling him
all sorts of things. He goes out there on the track. They're warming up, right? And now you don't exactly know. I'm sure they have parts of the track where it tells you what kind of start it is, like whether it's a stop start or a rolling start. But even just to not have that team communication, like, okay, rolling start, you're going to get going pretty quick here.
Yeah. And then what engine modes to be using when you're defending and like, I feel like that's a huge disadvantage. So
to hang on to P4 with no team radio for basically half the race is like almost incredible these days.
Yeah, it's wild, especially for his start. I can almost guarantee he had no idea what was going on.
Yeah,
it could have been another lap. Like who knows? And he might have had like some idea, but for them to just like take off, he was probably just like trying to react to what everyone else was doing.
Seriously, looking in your mirrors and that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
Shit, there goes Lando.
Yeah.
Better step on it here.
Well, since we're kind of talking about the restart, maybe we should just talk about how we got to the restart
with the red flag.
So that was a huge impact with Bottas and George Russell. And it's always interesting to see, like it definitely makes a race more interesting, and it's fucking cool to see a crash like that. But you're always worried, you're always kind of like, holy,
but it's also scary.
Oh, absolutely. Like they were saying top speeds there was about 290, 295 kilometers an hour.
That's crazy.
And Booter, who did you think was at fault in that one?
It's so tough because I've watched it back a couple times, and I honestly don't I don't really think anyone is. And if you watch it, and Max passed Lewis on that exact same spot, 3 cars wide, and was like right on the grass. And I think Russell, like, he obviously reacts to Bottas. Like, you're going, like you said, almost 300 kilometers an hour. He just moves over a little bit. Russell reacts and then hits that wet grass. I think if he doesn't, he gets around and he's fine, because I think there's still room there. So I don't think it's really anyone's fault. It's just kind of like a racing incident. Bottas could have maybe stayed over, but at the same time, you're passing him. You kind of got to expect him to, like, he's not trying to run you off the track, but he's staying in that racing line.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. He's and that's kind of what they labeled it, a racing incident. Like, there's no penalizing anybody from the FIA anyway. Now, it seemed like Toto Wolff wasn't very happy. You've got Russell, he's Mercedes property, and that was a lot of damage on that Mercedes car, on both cars. But Toto goes, this is costing us. I read an article, and it's costing them about $145 million. That crash. That's how much that costed them. And he believes that it's gonna, since they have to, there's a budget this year, and I'm sure there has been, but the budget is like $200 million on repairs or some shit.
Right. So it just eats up the majority of that.
It eats up that budget, for one. And he was saying how they're most likely not going to be able to put the upgrades in that car that they were planning to, because they have to allocate pieces of that budget to just the full on repair of that vehicle.
That's great news.
Which is great. Like, but as a team principal, Toto,
totally,
you could see why you're pissed. And he was kind of saying how George is, I read something that said he was too eager to be getting into that Mercedes car, that's,
I don't know. It's so hard to say that. I don't really agree with that being like too eager, because if you're racing for P9 in Williams after the last 2 seasons, racing for like 12th or lower, like you're at the back of the grid every race, and now you're racing for P9, and you have the opportunity and the pace to pass the Mercedes. Like, if he didn't hit the grass there, he would have passed Bottas. He had the pace, he had the opportunity. So I think
DRS too.
He had every right to make the pass, and I don't know.
I think what Toto was saying is like of course he had every right to make the pass, but at the end of the day, they are kind of labeling it more as a Russell error, because it shows on camera that there was space on the left-hand side, for both of them to be on track, and he moves and slips onto the grass, which then takes that fucking right wheel and just shoots it and pushes the car to the left. I actually thought that front tire was like close to Bottas's head when I saw that.
It is close. Yeah. You gotta from Russell's, because I thought it was so funny watching when like Russell gets out of the car and the commentator's like, yeah, he's just going over to make sure he's okay. And I'm like, that is not what's happening right now.
I could have out of that car in a hurry.
Super quick. Exactly. But from his, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, that to me seemed a bit immature, because it happened so quickly. This is a racing incident. Like, you are racing. This can happen. You know, was he trying to kill you? Absolutely not. And he didn't even do any, there was no action that was like not responsible by Bottas,
No, for sure.
He was just keeping his racing line.
Yeah.
In a sense.
I think from George's perspective, he's like, this is the first time I'm fighting for points in years in a Williams, and I'm trying to pass like the car that he believes he should be driving. And like that's where it is. I think it's just like he thinks he deserves that seat, and he does. Like, he outperformed in that car with like 1 day in it. You get that guy a full season, like, it's just gonna be insane.
Squished in too.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. It's tough to say. I don't think anyone's really at fault. George have like probably shouldn't have gone over there, and smacked Bottas and whatever. But at the end of the day, I love to see it. It's great.
Oh, passion, baby. That's what it's all about.
It's so good. Yeah. And now that just adds another thing to the story too when Russell takes over that seat. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, that uncensored version was so funny to hear that you said.
Oh, it's so funny.
Wit. What did you say? Just like people swearing like
what a fucking prick.
Yeah. What a fucking prick.
Yeah. Is he trying to kill us both?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that race, it had juicy bits, man. Like that was I'm so happy to see the first 2 races of the year get juicy. And we've only talked about, kind of the top 10 guys. I mean, Lance Stroll ended up finishing in P8, which is some points on the board for Aston Martin and a nice performance by him. It's funny how Stroll and Ocon, so, the younger guys paired up with the vets, beat out their veteran world champions, which is
totally, man,
always good to see.
Like one of the first times Alonso was out qualified by a teammate in a while.
Yep.
So yeah, it's impressive. Curious to see how like Aston Martin does throughout the rest of the season. If they get a little bit more pace, if Vettel starts to drive a little bit better. Who knows?
Yeah, they had to retire his car on like the last or second last lap.
Yeah, I feel like if he was battling for points, they probably wouldn't have retired his car, because I think Lance was dealing with a similar issue. And it was probably like he's in 17th place or whatever it was at the time.
Right.
He's like the only 2 cars behind him are the 2 Haas's. Like he's dead last. They're probably just like, let's just keep pull him out of his misery and just call it quits.
It says did he still finish ahead of Schumacher and Mazepin?
I think so, because they were like 2 laps down.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Man, I can't believe they were 2 laps down.
I just don't think the Haas has any pace this season. Like they will just, I'm convinced through 2 races. I know that's early, but they just don't look like they have any pace.
Yeah. And what do you also think maybe part of it is they went with 2 rookies? Like, do you think that might be, there might be like,
it doesn't help. It doesn't help when one of your rookies has been spinning out multiple times every race.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Schumacher had a pretty good race.
Yeah. And speaking of Schumacher, how funny was his spin warming up the tires on the safety car?
Oh, I totally forgot.
And hearing his engineer talking to him, it's like, we're gonna take it's all fine, like we'll play it because it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
It was like it's like a little kid freaking out, and then like dad being like, it's gonna be okay, son. Like,
yeah.
Don't worry, you're going to be okay. We'll fix the car.
Yeah,
nothing's
we'll
wrong.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we'll fix the car.
So take your time, Mick. There's no rush. It's all right. There's no rush to get around. Just get the car around safely, and we'll get you a new front wing, and we'll get you fresh tires, okay? Just drive slow. The message from race control is to drive slowly, Mick.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, he like coming down right after the pit, right? And then he just like hits the wall and loses his front wing.
Yeah, he was just the tires, man.
Yeah, I think Mick will, as he gets more experience through the first few races, I think we'll start to see him compete a little bit more with other drivers. I guess that is ultimately up to the car as well. Like maybe it's just the rookies not having a very good start. And that's why Haas has finished at the back both races, or maybe it's the car. I guess we'll see in the next few races, but I think Schumacher has looked promising at some points during each race.
Yeah.
I know he was a couple seconds up on Mazepin in Imola, like just on average through their lap times.
Yeah.
So,
and just being like 2 seconds up on your teammate is big.
It is. Yeah, I'm excited.
I feel like it's just for those 2 guys, and especially Mick, it's just getting, used to an F1 car, seeing the pace of everybody, because we all know that Haas is not doing anything this year, and they've invested all of their money into the new regulations for next year. So
yeah, exactly.
Ideally, he can just get comfortable and like in an F1 car for the first time, finish some races, beat some guys, whatever, just have some competition a little bit anyway. Outperform your teammate. That's like your biggest question. And then we'll see what they can do next year. That's kind of That's what I see going on with the American slash. I love how it's like an American slash Russian team now.
I know.
Yeah.
Speaking of America, Miami. Yeah.
It's Miami. Let's go.
I know that's going to be so good. 10-year contract starting next year. I would imagine it's going to be a city circuit.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's ripping right around the Hard Rock Stadium.
That's going to be so good. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be
wild.
That's definitely a PR push for F1 to be in Miami. And then assuming they're dropping their other Austin. Yeah.
I would be, dude, I don't know if like they could be trying, have more North American circuits. I wouldn't be surprised if they kept both of them, because you have Austin that's like a track, and then you have Miami, a city circuit. I could see them doing both.
Yeah, and Austin is kind of a cool track. It's got some like wicked elevation,
totally,
especially up that main street. Like they just fucking go up into that corner.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Not often do you actually notice that elevation when they're racing.
No, for sure. Yeah, it's tough.
But yeah, it's going to be cool regardless. So I guess they're going to be adding Miami, and then they've got Saudi Arabia, which are both street circuits.
Right.
So street circuits are like, sometimes they're great, sometimes they're not. So we'll kind of see what happens. But next week, are we getting into next week yet, or do we have anything?
I don't think so. And we got a week break, don't we?
We got a week break. 3 weeks was way too long.
Way too long. I feel like I started watching Drive to Survive season 1 over again.
Exactly.
I was like, oh man, I need some F1 in my life.
But before we get into the next race, like speaking of Drive to Survive, I think it's so cool how they've done that. We touched on that in a previous podcast, but just even this week, I had 2 buddies message me after the race and like, oh, I watched like the race highlights and I've been kind of like binging Drive to Survive, and I love it.
Yeah, I feel like there's even more spotlight after like the 3rd season. There's like people that are actually starting. There's some people that have never even heard of it still, which is pretty wild. But I think it's just going to continue to gain popularity. Yeah,
it's definitely it's growing the sport a lot.
For sure.
And it's growing the sport very quickly too.
Mm-hmm. No, totally.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love the show. I love the Hollywood aspect to it.
We got a 2-week or a 1-week break?
Yeah, it's like 2 weeks apart. So we got this weekend with nothing coming up here, and then they're off to Portimao in Portugal, which was a fun track to watch last year. It has some cool elevation changes. It's kind of similar probably to that Imola track, but maybe passing is a little bit more inviting. So I think it's another track that Red Bull has a really good shot at doing well. And I think McLaren also, with like that strong chassis that McLaren always has, will probably shine there. And obviously the Mercedes are expected to be up near the top as usual. Nothing's changing. And I would love to see Ferrari, get a podium this weekend. That would be, if we can see a Ferrari podium, I think we're in for a really good challenge for that P3 spot in the constructors.
Yeah. It's not like, I don't think it's definitely realistic, I think, for that to happen. And if it's not this weekend, like, I think they're just taking steps to get there. So I think, that like 3 through like 6 spot every weekend is just going to be so close.
Yeah.
I think what's important for Ferrari is that they've had 2 clean races too. Like,
absolutely.
Minimal incidents. I know Charles kind of went into the wall in qualifying, but he had like a near perfect race.
Yeah.
So for them to finish 4 or 5 is like a lot of points on the board to get them up into that. I think they're in 4th place in constructors now.
Yeah, I think so.
They're right behind McLaren.
Yeah. It's going to be a tight battle.
Sweet. And then we got, I think the next race is doubleheader too, right? We got 2 races back to back.
Yeah, let's take a quick look here. I believe you're right. So Portuguese Grand Prix is May 2nd, and then it goes to Spain May 9th. Yeah, beautiful. Back to backs.
Oh, and then Monaco.
And Monaco, which is always a a fun one to watch.
Yeah, it is fun.
I wonder when they're going to start introducing fans into the stands here.
Yeah, I have no idea.
And it looks like the Canadian GP is probably not happening.
It's looking less likely by the week.
Yeah, Canada, they said that, the FIA in Canada, Formula One in Canada has been talking, and unless Canada can cough up $6 million to counteract no fans in the stadium, they're going to take the race to Turkey.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
The quarantine period is also a big issue for them too.
Yeah, they're all that's pissed. Why they're pissed that the players or the drivers and the teams and the personnel don't have to quarantine for,
That's why they changed the Australian Grand Prix, because everyone was going to be required to quarantine for 14 days. So they moved it to end of November, I guess. So
nice.
Hopefully, by then they shouldn't have to.
I feel like the Canadian one, they were probably planning to have fans at it, and then just within the last month, they've been like, never mind, we're not doing that.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And now it's probably too late to postpone that thing. And
yeah.
So it sucks because that's 2 years in a row without. I mean, and it's not for sure yet. It might happen, but it's kind of looking like it'll be 2 years in a row without the Canadian GP, which is a fun track to watch, man. Like it's a lot of good passing. It's Montreal in the summertime. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And we have tickets still that we're not once again. So either we get a refund or we push that shit to next year.
Yeah. Push it.
Yeah. I'm down to push. I mean, that money is just fairy dust to me now. It's gone.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't even know if we'd get it back.
Probably not.
But yeah, man, these next few races coming up are all looking great. Like Portugal, Spain, Monaco, Azerbaijan, which is kind of a cool big straights.
Yeah, very cool.
City circuit. And it'll probably go to Turkey, which is like right next door to Azerbaijan. So that works well.
Yeah.
France, Austria. Oh man, it's going to be fun.
Let's don't get too ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
I know.
European circuit is always fun.
Yeah, they are. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you're listening on Spotify, thank you. Hit the like button, save it, whatever you do on Spotify.
Share with your friends.
If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and notification bell.
Yeah. Bing. And give us a follow on Instagram. We're pumping out content, everything Formula One, European soccer. We're getting into NFL draft here soon. So that's going to start heating up pretty quick over the off season. So yeah, give it a follow and we will see you guys sometime soon, probably next week.
We'll see you in Portugal.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.